Whether you're planning to travel full-time and getting rid of everything, or you're keeping a home base and just doing extended travel, or maybe you're just approaching retirement, downsizing can be the best thing for you and for your family.
This is sometimes known as Swedish Death Cleaning, but you don't have to be a specific age in order to go through this process. It's really a matter of reflecting on the things you have and letting go of the things that no longer serve a purpose in your life.
In this episode, we'll talk about 5 realities and 8 questions that will help you power through your downsizing process.
I'm Judy.
And I'm Kevin. Welcome back to Finding Gina Marie, where we share our lives as full-time travelers and the connections we make along the way.
This is our second episode of a multi-part series on how to declutter for full-time travel. Our next episode will break down exactly how to get started so that you can build some quick wins and stay motivated.
We have some older episodes from when we were thinking about being expats, where you can see some of this in action. Let's get started with the 5 realities you need to know.
Number 1, everybody wants a deal. Unless your stuff is rare and valuable, don't expect to get even close to what you paid for it. 2, selling is a long, tedious process and may be much more time-consuming than you realize.
Number 3, family and friends will want much less than you would expect, even for free. They have plenty of their own stuff, and in our consumerism society, many would rather buy new than receive hand-me-downs.
4, even donation spots don't take everything, or even close to everything, so you likely will have to use a variety of places for your donations.
And 5, the most important reality is that this downsizing process is temporary. It's only a short time of your life that you have to power through. The process of getting rid of your stuff is not going to last forever, even if it feels that way at times.
Remember that once this is done, you'll have a sense of lightness and freedom that feels glorious. And if you don't start collecting things again, you'll never have to go through this painful process in the future.
We put together a free download to help you with this process, and we'll be updating it periodically.
So if you have suggestions on how to improve it, we would love to hear that. We'll put a link in the description of this episode, but you can also go to our website and pull it down under the download section.
And remember, as we're going through these questions, your goal is to downsize, not overanalyze. Question 1. How much lead time do we have before we leave?
Obviously, the more lead time you have, the easier everything will be. You'll be able to handle more of it yourself, and you'll have more options available to you.
But with this extra time, if you're a procrastinator, you may need some extra motivation to drive things along, keep them moving forward. The less time you give yourself for proper downsizing, the more items are going to end up in a landfill.
We found this process to be super eye-opening. We had no idea how much stuff we had. We'd actually thought we were on our way to being minimalists, but we had so much stuff we still had to get rid of. I think if we would have started the process sooner, just even in our lives, not even waiting for a big downsizing purpose, we would have spent less money. We would have been much more conscious about the things that we were wasting money on, and we wouldn't have all of these regrets for all the things that we were ending up sending to the landfill. The second question that we needed to ask ourselves was how high on our list was selling versus donating items. There's a variety of different ways that you can sell things.
Of course, there are garage sales, yard sales, estate sales, consignment stores, and a myriad of online methods like Facebook Marketplace, eBay, Poshmark, Craigslist, and apps like OfferUp.
If you're planning to do any type of online selling, you need to be aware that it is a robust, time-consuming process with a lot of steps.
Some of those steps include taking clear photos, documenting imperfections, setting pricing, posting this information, negotiating, and meeting to exchange money and goods, and waiting time if they're late.
Also, even the process of posting requires multiple steps. Describing items can be time-consuming, involves measuring the items, and people who think that posting a picture is enough are wrong. You are going to need to compel any potential buyers with your words.
And you should know that responding to all potential buyers and scammers out there is time-consuming.
And even if you're offering things to coworkers or family and friends, either for free or at a discount, you're still going to need to describe what they are and take photos and all of the rest.
We suggest you weigh how much time, effort, and money it's going to take to sell these items online, and whether there's a minimum threshold that you need to set to say, if it's below this level of item, I'm just not going to try to sell it.
For items that you're willing to sell, are there any of them that you are willing to deliver Or is everything going to be pickup only? Are you willing to ship certain items? Be aware of what the cost of that is and build it into some of your pricing. Even with family and friends who might want some of your heirloom items, be mindful of what it costs to pack and ship and postage for all of that. I had a couple of nieces that I gifted my china and some expensive glassware, but it cost a lot of money just to ship all of that. And except for the memories of those items and maybe carrying on some family traditions of using those items in their own homes, they could have found something from a flea market or a thrift store that would have been much cheaper for everyone involved.
And the process of you packing all that up and getting it prepared for shipping, fragile items, takes a lot more effort, a lot more time, and money packing.
It was worth it in this situation, but you'll need to weigh that for yourself.
But when it comes down to it, for most items, family doesn't want your stuff. Consider setting a deadline for these selling items. If they're sitting on the servers for 6 months, maybe you should be donating them instead.
The more stuff that you have in a state of flux, the more brain cells that you're having to consume to worry about those items. Donate it and move on.
To avoid the expense and hassle of shipping items, focus on selling things locally.
If you're using online platforms, don't share your phone number, which is what every scammer wants from you. Don't give it to them. Communicate through the platform only.
And beware of a buyer that can't pick things up themselves. It's often a scam, and the next thing they'll ask you for is your phone number.
Always ensure that you successfully receive payment from the buyer before shipping out an item or handing it to them. And if you're shipping through a service like eBay or an app like Let Go or OfferUp, adhere to their payment rules and services.
If you're selling in person, cash is king. No matter what kind of service they want to use to pay for a product, you're handing over your stuff, and it really is important that you have the cash up front. And of course, don't accept checks. That's not going to work.
It's a good idea to stagger what you're selling so you have time to respond to requests. You can be overwhelmed with answering questions, and it can be a lot more time consuming than you think it is. Always meet in a public place that is well lit and has people around. We met buyers on the corner in our neighborhood, which was across the street from a park.
And don't accept overpayments. That's also a scam. You'll also have to be prepared to haggle. You have priced things to sell, but there's always someone who will offer $50 for a $2,000 item or $5 for a $500 item.
If you've had any experience selling used items and you have tips for our viewers, please let us know in the comments.
Question 3. Do you care what a donation site does with your stuff? In the US, there are several large donation services like Goodwill and Salvation Army, and you may not be aware of exactly where all the stuff is going. Does it matter to you?
If you just want to be rid of your stuff and you want to do that in the least number of steps, that could be a really good way of getting rid of things. Be aware that the items you donate still need to be in good, wearable, usable condition, and there still may be restrictions on what things that they are willing to accept.
Some people are very concerned about how much of the profits from their donations are going back into their community. Other people are just happy to have their stuff be someone else's problem.
And you can be anywhere on that scale. Nobody is here to judge you. But just bear in mind that you want to know why you made the decisions that you've made. Which then brings us to our next question. Do you want to target any of your donations?
If you want to make sure your donations help out your local school, libraries, or youth services, you'll have to separate those items out and make sure that they're ready for donation to those specific spots.
You'll also need to ensure that you understand exactly what items they accept, what their drop-off times, and be prepared to make those calls and take time out of your decluttering process to do those extra drop-offs.
For example, we wanted to donate books to a public library. But what we didn't know is we need to set an appointment to drop off these books because they actually want to go through them and make sure that what they're accepting is acceptable to the library.
There was actually a 1.5 month lead time for that, so we had to have our books hanging around for that period of time. I also donated a bunch of my stationery supplies and some of my less expensive fountain pens to a fountain pen community in my area. Fortunately, I had somebody that was willing to pick them up, but that's not always the case. So somebody like us, we didn't own a car. That's an extra complexifier in your process.
Sometimes sports equipment can go to the YMCA or schools, and the SPCA can take some of your linens and your blankets, which really can't be donated to too many places.
Domestic violence shelters and soup kitchens will often take your unopened pantry items that aren't expired, and also some unopened paper products, and maybe even some household goods. You just need to check with them first.
Question 5. Will we be gifting our favorite things or primarily the leftovers?
You may have a relative that's in college and you know that they would probably enjoy some of your kitchen items, but you have to reach out to those people. It helps if you have an idea of the things that you want to give away to family and friends first, so they don't have to wonder what you own. And again, that is one more step in the process that can be time consuming. If you're trying to decide which items that you sell versus give away to family and friends, and you make the decision to sell certain things, but you only get a quarter or less of their value, will you feel worse about selling them than giving them away to people who might appreciate them?
Or are you just glad to have it gone? Because that really helps to have it out of the house. Question 6. Who do we know that we might gift or give away things to?
It helps if you have certain people in mind for specific items you think that they might appreciate. For instance, if you have expensive jewelry and you have one particular niece or nephew or relative that you want to give that item to, it's probably better to do that now while you're alive to enjoy seeing them receive those gifts, but also so that you don't mention everything that you're giving away and have to decide who gets what. Because you kind of have to figure out, does first person
Who wins? Who gets it first?
Because sometimes there are those relatives who will ask for everything, and maybe you wanted them distributed more equally.
And there also may be people at work, because I worked at Apple, I worked at a tech company. I knew a lot of tech gear that I had would probably be of interest to them. And I really wasn't expecting to be able to sell it for the price. I would rather have friends that I knew from work be able to use it.
Invariably, despite all of your best efforts, there are going to be many things that end up in a landfill. Question 7 is, how ethical are you needing to be about keeping as much out of a landfill as possible?
Now, as we said, part of this process is giving yourself enough time. If you plan ahead, you won't have this crunch at the end so that you end up just throwing things away.
There are things like dirty stained clothes or torn items or shoes that have lost their usefulness, and you can't actually donate them anywhere. But there are places that will accept these types of textiles. Now, sometimes you actually have to pay to give them those items so that they can then do the recycling process. But that might be something that is part of your value system. There's 2 companies offhand. One is called Ridwell and the other is TerraCycle. And I personally have used TerraCycle and have been very happy with the process. TerraCycle actually partners with a lot of different companies like Black & Decker. So if you have some appliances that are not in usable condition, you can box them up for free and send them to Black & Decker and they'll recycle them. You can go on their website and you can find out all of the details about all of the products that they accept.
And question 8, how much time and effort are we going to spend to do something versus outsourcing it, hiring someone to help?
One of our viewers specifically mentioned that they took care of all of this stuff they wanted to, and then they just hired an estate company to help them get rid of the rest. Now, bear in mind, estate companies can charge up to 50%, possibly even more, to manage that process for you. And sometimes because it's your own home, that will mean that you'll have people coming and going. But it might be worth it to you just to have a one and done for something like that.
We were emptying our one storage unit. We said, well, there's a few memorabilia items in here that we're going to take. We're going to put them in our apartment. And then the rest we just don't care about, but we didn't want them being thrown out. So I contacted a company called EcoJunk that was in the San Francisco area, and they made sure that they would resell, recycle, reuse before they tried to do the last case, which is throw things out. Now, they didn't charge much because they were expecting to make some money off of the things that we were letting them take out of our storage unit. And the only step I had to do was stand there, unlock the storage unit, and wait for them to finish emptying it. And then it was clean.
Now, we used them when we were getting rid of a storage unit when we were moving from one apartment to another, not necessarily when we were downsizing to travel full time. Of course, you could use it for that. I'm just letting you know we didn't bring things back into our apartment when we were downsizing.
Do you have any tips we've missed? Please let us know in the comments below.
We hope this episode is helpful for you. Please subscribe if you're not already. Next week, we'll be talking about where to get started so that you can have some quick wins in your downsizing process. And the best compliment that you can give to us is to share our videos with your family and friends.
Check out findinggina.com, where you can read our articles, find out more about us, and get our downloadable resource to help you with this process.
Until next time.
Until next time.